Blinding white light explodes through the steel ribs of the hangar, slicing across the concrete like a spotlight on a firing squad. 37 paratroopers stand at attention, chests out, jaws locked, boots polished to mirror perfection. They look like they were forged in fire. At the end of the line, barely reaching shoulder height on the man beside her, stands Elena Vasquez. 5'4", 120 pounds. But no one sees the weight she actually carries. They only see what they want to see, a girl who doesn't belong. Quota, diversity points. She'll break on the first jump. They've said it all. Not to her face. Never that brave, but loud enough for her to hear. Loud enough to make sure she never forgets that she's surrounded by men who think she's a mistaken uniform. But Elena doesn't blink, doesn't twitch, doesn't breathe harder. Because none of them know the truth. She didn't come here to prove them wrong. She came to bury them. Listen up, maggots. Sergeant Major Richardson's voice booms across the hangar, his weathered face twisted into its permanent scowl. 28 years in the 82nd Airborne. Chest full of ribbons, arms like tree trunks. The kind of man who believes weakness is contagious, and women are the ultimate weakness. Today you prove whether you belong in my unit, or if you're just wasting taxpayer money. His eyes linger on Elena as he speaks, the message clear to everyone present. She's the waste of taxpayer money he's referring to. She's the social experiment that needs to fail so order can be restored to his perfectly masculine world. Elena's fingers brush against the small silver object in her breast pocket, a habit she's developed over the past 6 months of training. The metal is warm from her body heat, smooth from years of handling. She doesn't need to look at it to know every detail, the eagle's wings spread wide, the paratrooper's insignia, the date engraved on the back, Captain Miguel Vasquez, KIA, Afghanistan, 2019. Her father, her hero, her secret. Final jump qualification, Richardson continues, pacing in front of the formation like a predator sizing up prey. 14,000 feet. Night drop. Target landing zone is a 50-meter circle. Miss it by more than 20 meters, and you're out. No second chances. No participation trophies. No lowered standards because someone in Washington thinks we need to be more inclusive. The word inclusive drips from his mouth like poison. Several soldiers shift uncomfortably, but others nod in agreement. Elena has learned to read the room over these long months. Who might offer quiet support, who would sabotage her equipment if given the chance, and who simply doesn't care as long as she stays out of their way. The hangar fills with nervous energy. Elena has watched 17 candidates wash out over the past month. Good soldiers, most of them. Strong men with impressive service records, and the kind of natural athletic ability that made everything look easy. But not good enough for Richardson's standards. Not good enough for the 82nd Airborne's elite reconnaissance unit. If they couldn't make it, what chance did she have? That's what everyone was thinking. She could see it in their faces, hear it in their carefully neutral voices when they spoke to her. Even the ones who tried to be kind carried that underlying assumption that she was brave for trying, admirable for her determination, but ultimately doomed to failure. What they didn't understand was that Elena had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Vasquez. Her name cracks through the air like a whip. Every head turns toward her, 36 pairs of eyes studying the small woman who doesn't belong. She steps forward, spine straight, chin up, the way her father taught her when she was 7 years old and being bullied at school. Yes, Sergeant Major. Richardson's boots click against the concrete as he approaches. Up close, she can smell the coffee on his breath, see the network of scars across his knuckles, count the gray hairs in his bristling mustache. Battle scars. Real ones, the kind earned in places where politics don't matter and only competence keeps you alive. You sure you want to do this, sweetheart? His voice drips with condescension. Several soldiers snicker behind her. That's a 14,000-foot drop. Equipment weighs 60 pounds. Winds are gusting at 20 knots. You people aren't exactly built for this kind of work. You people. The words hit like a slap, but Elena doesn't flinch. She's heard worse. Much worse. 6 months of creative insults have given her a thick skin and an even thicker resolve. I'm ready, Sergeant Major. Richardson circles her slowly, a shark scenting blood. Ready? He laughs, a harsh sound that echoes off the hangar walls. Girl, you barely made it through basic training. Took you 3 tries to pass the PT test. You think because they lowered the standards to let women in, that means you can hang with real paratroopers. The accusations sting because they're partially true. She had struggled with the physical requirements, not because she was weak, but because she'd spent years hiding her true capabilities. Growing up as Miguel Vasquez's daughter, she'd learned early that being too good at military skills raised questions she wasn't ready to answer. The hangar has gone dead silent. Even the mechanics working on the aircraft have stopped to watch. Elena feels heat rising in her cheeks, but her voice remains steady. I've completed every qualification requirement, Sergeant Major. Barely. Richardson stops in front of her, close enough that she has to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Tell me, Vasquez, what happens when you freeze up 14,000 feet above the ground? What happens when that chute gets tangled and you're spinning like a leaf? You gonna cry for your mommy? More laughter from the formation. Louder this time. Elena's jaw clenches involuntarily, and she knows Richardson sees it, knows he's drawing blood. But Richardson isn't finished. He never is when he has an audience and a target. Or maybe, Richardson continues, his voice dropping to a stage whisper that somehow carries to every corner of the hangar. Maybe you'll do what you did during the obstacle course last week. Remember that? When you couldn't make it over the 12-foot wall. Had to get a boost from Corporal Martinez there. Martinez shifts uncomfortably, avoiding Elena's gaze. He'd offered to help when he saw her struggling, a moment of genuine kindness that now feels like betrayal. She doesn't blame him in Richardson's unit. Survival means knowing which way the wind blows and never standing out for the wrong reasons. Maybe you'll need someone to hold your hand on the way down, too. Richardson's smile is cruel, predatory. Face it, sweetheart. This isn't a game. This isn't some equal opportunity publicity stunt. This is about life and death. And frankly, I don't trust you to tie your own boots, let alone jump out of a perfectly good airplane. The words hang in the air like poison gas. Elena can feel her heart hammering against her ribs, can feel the weight of every stare, every smirk, every whispered comment she's endured for the past 6 months. The late-night harassment, the sabotaged equipment, the constant, grinding pressure to quit. But underneath the humiliation, something else is building. A cold fury that's been growing since the day she walked into this place. They want her to break? They want her to cry? They're about to learn they picked the wrong woman to humiliate. What they didn't know was that Elena Vasquez had been falling from the sky since she was 16 years old. Sergeant Major, she says quietly, permission to speak freely. Richardson raises an eyebrow, clearly delighted. This is going even better than he'd hoped. This should be good. Go ahead, soldier. Elena takes a deep breath, her fingers finding that silver object in her pocket one more time. The metal seems to pulse with warmth, as if her father's spirit is reaching across the years to give her strength. I understand your concerns about my capabilities. I understand that my presence here challenges your assumptions about what a soldier should look like. Her voice is steady, controlled, but there's steel underneath. But I've trained for this moment my entire life. I won't let you down. Your entire life? Richardson throws his head back and laughs. What are you, 22? 23? What could you possibly know about? I know that courage isn't about size. Elena's voice cuts through his laughter like a blade. I know that the best soldiers aren't always the biggest or the loudest. And I know that you're about to be proven very, very wrong. The hangar goes dead silent. Richardson's face darkens, his jaw working like he's chewing nails. For a moment, Elena thinks he might explode, might throw her out right here in front of everyone. Instead, he smiles. It's the most terrifying expression she's ever seen. Is that right? His voice is soft now, dangerous. Well then, Vasquez, let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to gear up. You're going to get on that plane. And when you wash out not, when I'm going to personally escort you off this base, and then I'm going to make sure every unit in the Army knows that Elena Vasquez couldn't cut it. That women don't belong in combat roles. That this whole integration experiment was a mistake from day one. The threat hangs heavy in the air. Elena knows he means every word. Richardson has the connections, the influence, the reputation to make good on his promise. One phone call from him could end her military career before it really begins. Elena meets his stare without blinking, and if I don't wash out, Richardson's smile widens. Then I'll personally pin those wings on your chest and call you a paratrooper. But that's not going to happen, sweetheart, because you just humiliated the wrong sergeant major. The words follow Elena as she moves toward the equipment room, each step echoing in the suddenly quiet hangar. Behind her, she can hear the low murmur of conversation resuming, can imagine the bets being placed, the odds being calculated. Nobody gives her much of a chance. In the equipment room, Elena goes through the familiar ritual of gearing up. Jumpsuit first digital camouflage that's designed for men twice her size, requiring careful adjustments to ensure a proper fit. Combat boots, laced tight enough to provide ankle support during landing, but not so tight as to restrict blood flow during the long flight. Helmet with built-in radio system, allowing communication with jumpmaster and ground control. The parachute system is the most critical component. Main chute rated for her body weight plus equipment load, packed according to strict specifications by certified riggers. Reserve chute as backup, hopefully never to be used, but inspected with the same meticulous care. The harness distributes the opening shock across her torso, preventing the kind of injuries that can end careers or lives. As she adjusts the leg straps, Elena allows herself a moment to remember her first jump. 16 years old, standing in a civilian aircraft over the desert outside Phoenix, her father beside her checking her equipment with the same professional thoroughness she's learned to apply to herself. "Remember, Mia," he'd said, his weathered hands gentle on her harness buckles. "The ground doesn't care about your fears. Physics doesn't care about your doubts. All that matters is your training and your trust in the equipment." Captain Miguel Vasquez, the youngest Hispanic officer ever to earn his wings with the Golden Knights demonstration team. Alana's hero, her teacher, her best friend, the man who'd taught her to see the sky not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a home to be embraced. He'd started taking her to civilian drop zones when she was 14, initially just to watch. "Learn from observation," he'd said. "See how different body types handle different conditions. Watch how the wind affects descent rates. Understand the physics before you trust your life to them." Elena had absorbed every lesson like a sponge. Wind patterns, canopy dynamics, emergency procedures. By the time she made her first jump, she understood the science as well as any instructor. By her 20th jump, she was better than most weekend warriors with hundreds of jumps under their belts. "You're a natural, Elena," he'd said after her first precision landing competition. "I've never seen anyone take to the air like you do. It's in your blood." That was 5 years before the IED took him apart on a road outside Kandahar. 5 years before Elena enlisted under her mother's maiden name, determined to follow in his footsteps while keeping his identity secret. 5 years before she learned that being Miguel Vasquez's daughter meant nothing if nobody knew who Miguel Vasquez was. 2 hours later, Elena sits in the back of the C-130 transport plane, the drone of 4 turboprop engines filling her ears like white noise. The aircraft smells of hydraulic fluid, jet fuel, and the nervous sweat of 37 soldiers about to throw themselves into the night sky. The other candidates are scattered throughout the aircraft's cargo bay, some joking nervously to mask their anxiety, others staring out the small windows at the ground far below. A few are reviewing their jump procedures one final time, lips moving silently as they run through emergency scenarios. Elena checks her equipment for the 5th time altimeter secured to her chest strap, where she can read it easily during descent. Reserve chute handle positioned for quick access. Radio system functioning properly. Emergency beacon activated. Everything exactly where it should be, exactly as her father taught her. Across the cargo bay, she catches Corporal Martinez watching her. He looks away quickly, but not before she sees the guilt in his eyes. She doesn't blame him for what happened during Richardson's public humiliation. In Richardson's unit, survival means knowing which way the wind blows and never putting yourself between the sergeant major and his target. Private Jenkins sits a few seats away, his massive frame making the aircraft's bench seating look like children's furniture. 6'5", former college linebacker, a kind of natural athlete who makes everything look easy. He'd scored perfect marks on every qualification test, earned Richardson's grudging respect, and never missed an opportunity to remind Elena that she didn't belong. Nervous little girl? Jenkins calls out over the engine noise, his voice carrying just enough mockery to draw attention without crossing the line into insubordination. Still time to tell the jump master you've changed your mind. Several soldiers chuckle. Elena ignores them, focusing instead on her breathing pattern. In through the nose, hold for 4 counts, out through the mouth. The technique her father taught her for managing pre-jump anxiety. 30 minutes to drop zone. The jump master's voice crackles over the intercom. Sergeant First Class Morrison, a 20-year veteran with more jumps than anyone else on the aircraft. Final equipment check. Elena runs through the familiar ritual helmet secure. Goggles clean, harness tight but not restricted. Her fingers brush against the silver wings in her breast pocket. And suddenly she's 17 years old again, standing in another aircraft, listening to another jump master prepare a stick of civilian skydivers for their evening jump. Remember, Mia, her father's voice echoes across the years. Fear is just excitement without breath. Control your breathing, control your fear. The memory is so vivid, she can almost smell the desert air, can almost feel her father's presence beside her. He'd been proud that day his daughter had just qualified for the National Precision Landing Team, making her the youngest competitor in the event's history. You have a gift, he told her as they drove home from the competition. Not just skill, anyone can learn skill. You have intuition. You read the air like other people read books. That intuition had served her well over 400 civilian jumps. Competition jumps where millimeter precision mattered. Exhibition jumps where style and grace were judged alongside accuracy. High-altitude jumps where oxygen was thin and margins for error non-existent. But she'd hidden all of it when she enlisted, created a false identity as a mediocre athlete with no skydiving experience, let herself struggle through training, carefully modulating her performance to appear just competent enough to advance without standing out, until tonight. Tonight she was done hiding. 20 minutes. The jump master moves through the cabin, checking each soldier's gear with professional efficiency. When he reaches Elena, his hands pause on her harness. You good, soldier? She nods. Ready, Sergeant. Morrison studies her face for a moment, and she wonders what he sees there. Fear? Determination? The ghost of another paratrooper who'd made this same jump 1,000 times? Listen, he says quietly, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. Richardson's got it out for you. Everyone knows it. But out here, 14,000 feet up, it's just you and the sky. Don't let his bullshit get in your head. Elena looks up at him in surprise. Morrison is Richardson's right-hand man, his most trusted NCO, the last person she'd expect sympathy from. Why are you telling me this? Morrison glances around the cabin, making sure they're not being overheard. When he speaks again, his voice is even quieter. Because I knew your father. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She stares at Morrison, searching his weathered face for any sign of deception. Captain Miguel Vasquez, Morrison continues, served with him in Iraq, 2010. Best damn paratrooper I ever knew. Saved my life twice. He pauses, his voice growing rough with emotion. I was at his funeral. Saw a young woman in the front row. Looked just like him. Couldn't figure out why she didn't give a speech. Elena's throat tightens. She remembers that day, the rain, the folded flag, the crushing weight of watching her father disappear into the ground while strangers talked about his service record. She'd wanted to speak, wanted to tell everyone about the man who taught her to fly, but the words wouldn't come. I wasn't ready, she whispers. You're ready now. Morrison's hand settles on her shoulder, firm and warm. Your father was the best I ever served with. Taught me everything I know about reading wind patterns, about making impossible shots in impossible conditions. His eyes narrow. Show them what Vasquez blood can do. Before Elena can respond, the aircraft lurches suddenly, dropping several feet in an air pocket. The lights flicker from white to red, the 10-minute warning. Listen up, Morrison's voice booms through the cabin. Red light, 10 minutes to drop zone. Everyone on your feet. The candidates rise as one, shuffling into jump order. Elena finds herself third in line, sandwiched between two soldiers who tower over her like mountains. In front of her, Private Jenkins turns around with a sneer. Hope you said your prayers, little girl. Long way down. Behind her, Corporal Blake, another Richardson favorite, leans forward to whisper in her ear. Maybe you should have taken that desk job after all. Too late now, though. Elena doesn't respond. Her focus has narrowed to a laser point, the way her father taught her. Breathing steady, heart rate controlled, mind clear of everything except the jump. The aircraft's cargo bay has transformed from a place of nervous energy to one of focused intensity. 37 soldiers, each carrying 60 pounds of equipment, each knowing that the next few minutes will determine whether they advance to the next phase of training or pack their bags and find new assignments. 5 minutes. Final checks. The jump master moves down the line one last time, tugging on static lines, checking altimeters, ensuring that each soldier is properly connected to the aircraft's safety systems. Through the small window, Elena can see the drop zone far below, a tiny circle of light in an ocean of darkness, 50 meters across, the size of a tennis court from 14,000 feet up. The target that will determine her fate. 2 minutes. Stand by. The red light bathes everything in an eerie glow. Elena can hear her own heartbeat now, can feel the familiar surge of adrenaline that comes before every jump. But underneath the excitement, there's something else. A cold certainty that's been building for months. They just humiliated the wrong woman. Her father's wings seem to pulse against her chest, a talisman of everything she's inherited and everything she's about to prove. Miguel Vasquez had been a legend in the Airborne community, a man whose precision and skill had become the stuff of stories told in jump schools around the world. Tonight, Elena would show them that legends can have daughters. 30 seconds. Check equipment. Elena's hand finds the silver wings one last time. The metal is cold now, chilled by the high altitude. She thinks about her father, wonders what he would say if he could see her now, wonders if he'd be proud of the woman she's become, of the choice she's made to follow in his footsteps, despite every obstacle placed in her path. Around her, the other candidates make their own final preparations. Adjusting goggles, checking altimeters, running through mental checklists honed by months of training. Each one is dealing with the same fundamental challenge, the decision to step out of a perfectly good airplane and trust their life to fabric and cord. But Elena isn't nervous. For the first time in 6 months, she feels completely at peace. The sky is calling her home. Green light. Go, go. The jump master's voice cuts through the engine noise like a whip crack. The line surges forward, bodies disappearing through the open door one by one. Jenkins hesitates for just a moment. Elena sees his shoulders tense, sees him look down at the yawning void. Then he's gone, swallowed by the darkness. Blake follows. Then it's Elena's turn. She steps into the doorway, the wind hitting her like a physical force. 14,000 feet below, the earth spreads out like a vast map, cities and highways reduced to pinpricks of light. The drop zone beacon pulses steadily, a tiny target in an immense darkness. For just a moment, she allows herself to feel the terror, the crushing weight of empty air, the knowledge that she's about to throw herself into the void, with nothing but fabric and cords to keep her alive. It's the same fear every paratrooper feels, the rational mind screaming against an utterly irrational act. Then training takes over, her father's training. Elena steps forward and disappears into the night. The first 30 seconds are always chaos. Wind screaming past her helmet, her body tumbling through space like a rag doll. She spreads her arms and legs, finding stability, letting physics and training guide her into the proper free fall position. Around her, she can see the lights of other parachutists' tiny stars falling toward Earth. At 8,000 feet, she pulls her ripcord. The parachute deploys with a sharp crack, the harness jerking against her body as her downward plunge transforms into a controlled descent. Above her, the black canopy spreads wide against the stars, every line and panel exactly where it should be. Perfect deployment. Now comes the real test. Elena looks down, scanning the ground for the drop zone. They're a circle of lights, maybe 2 miles southeast of her current position. The wind is pushing her west, just as the weather report predicted. She grabs the steering toggles and begins the delicate dance of navigation. This is where her father's training shows, where thousands of civilian jumps translate into an almost supernatural understanding of air currents and timing. She can feel the wind patterns shifting around her, can read the subtle changes in air pressure that indicate thermal columns and wind shear. In her earpiece, she can hear radio chatter from the other jumpers. Jenkins sounds panicked. He's been pushed too far north, fighting the wind instead of working with it. 2 other candidates are already calling in missed landing zones, their voices tight with disappointment. Elena blocks out the noise, focusing entirely on the mathematics of descent. Wind speed 17 knots from the northwest. Altitude dropping at 16 feet per second. Forward progress calculated against the size of the target zone. Variables that have to be calculated and recalculated with every second that passes. At 5,000 feet, she's perfectly positioned. The drop zone fills her vision, the target circle growing larger with each second. She can see the landing zone officials setting up their equipment, can make out other parachutists scattered across the surrounding fields like discarded toys. At 4,000 feet, a crosswind tries to push her off course. Elena compensates instinctively, pulling on the right toggle to correct her drift. The adjustment is subtle, almost invisible, but it keeps her centered on the target. At 3,000 feet, she begins her final approach. The ground is rushing up now, details becoming sharp and clear. She can see individual people on the ground, can make out Richardson's bulky form standing at the edge of the landing zone. Even from this height, she can tell he's watching her descent with the intensity of a hawk studying a mouse. This is the moment that separates good paratroopers from great ones. The final approach requires perfect timing, absolute trust in the physics of flight, and the kind of spatial awareness that can't be taught. Elena has all 3 in abundance. At 2,000 feet, she makes a minor adjustment to compensate for a wind shift. At 1,000 feet, she begins her landing approach, pulling the toggles down to slow her descent rate. At 500 feet, her father's voice echoes in her memory. Don't aim for where you want to land, Mia. Aim for where the wind wants to take you, then use that energy to your advantage. At 200 feet, Elena releases the toggles, allowing her canopy to surge forward and convert vertical speed into horizontal momentum. It's a technique that requires perfect timing, absolute trust in the physics of flight. At 100 feet, she pulls both toggles down hard, flaring the parachute to arrest her forward motion. For a moment, she hangs suspended in the air, perfectly motionless above the target. Then her boots touch the ground exactly 3 feet from the orange X marking the center of the target zone. The landing is so soft, so precise, that for a moment the officials think she might have missed entirely. Elena collapses her chute with practiced efficiency, gathering the lines and fabric into a neat bundle while the landing zone team converges on her position. Sergeant Major Richardson approaches slowly, his face unreadable in the harsh glare of the floodlights. Behind him, Elena can see the other candidates watching from the edge of the zone, those who've already landed, and those still floating down toward uncertain fates. Distance from target? Richardson's voice is carefully neutral, but Elena can hear the underlying tension. The chief landing zone officer, a technical sergeant with 20 years of experience, measuring jump accuracy checks, his equipment twice before responding. His voice carries a note of disbelief. 3 feet, 2 inches, Sergeant Major. A murmur runs through the assembled soldiers. Elena can see shock on their faces, disbelief, grudging respect. A 3-footness is better than most of them have ever achieved, even in ideal conditions with unlimited practice jumps. Richardson stares at Elena for a long moment, his jaw working silently. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely above a whisper. Lucky. Elena meets his gaze without flinching. No, Sergeant Major. Skilled. Before Richardson can respond, another commotion erupts at the edge of the landing zone. Jenkins has finally touched down, nearly half a mile from the target. His massive frame is sprawled awkwardly in a drainage ditch, his parachute tangled in a fence line. 2 more candidates land in quick succession, both missing the zone by wide margins. Of the 37 jumpers who left the aircraft, only 7 land within the acceptable range. Elena's is the closest by more than 20 feet. Form up. Richardson's voice carries across the field like thunder. Equipment inspection. The successful candidates line up for the final check, parachutes properly stowed, equipment accounted for, no injuries sustained during landing. Elena stands at attention as Richardson approaches, his expression dark with something she can't quite identify. Vasquez. Yes, Sergeant Major. He stops directly in front of her, close enough that she can see the network of burst blood vessels in his eyes. When he speaks, his voice is low enough that only she can hear. I don't know how you did it. Beginner's luck, maybe. Or maybe someone gave you inside information about wind patterns. His smile is cold, predatory, but don't think this changes anything. You're still not paratrooper material. You're still just a quota filler in my unit. Elena's hand moves to her breast pocket, fingers closing around the silver wings. It's time to end the charade. Sergeant Major, may I ask you a question? Richardson's eyebrows rise. What? Have you ever heard of Captain Miguel Vasquez? For the first time since she's known him, Richardson looks genuinely surprised. His expression shifts from suspicion to confusion to something approaching recognition. Miguel Vasquez? Golden Knights demonstration team? Hell of a paratrooper. Killed in Afghanistan few years back. His eyes narrow suspiciously. Why? Elena slowly removes the silver wings from her pocket, holding them up so they catch the floodlight glare. Richardson's face goes pale as he reads the inscription. Captain Miguel Vasquez was my father. Elena's voice carries clearly across the landing zone as she sees heads turning, conversations stopping. He taught me to jump when I was 16. I've made over 400 civilian jumps, including 2 world championship competitions. One holds 3 national records in precision landing. The silence is complete now. Even the landing zone officials have stopped their equipment checks to listen. I enlisted under my mother's name because I wanted to earn my place based on my own merit, not my father's reputation. Elena's voice grows stronger, more confident. But since you seem to think this was luck, I thought you should know who trained me. Richardson stares at the wings, his face cycling through a dozen different expressions. Shock, disbelief, something that might be respect, something that might be fear. Miguel Vasquez was your father? Yes, Sergeant Major, and he taught me that true strength isn't loud, it's unshakable. Elena takes a step closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carries to every corner of the landing zone. He also taught me that the best soldiers are the ones who prove themselves when everyone expects them to fail. Richardson continues staring at the wings, and Elena can see the wheels turning in his head. Memories of a legendary paratrooper, stories passed down through the ranks, a reputation that still carries weight 5 years after death. Son of a bitch, he whispers finally. I prefer daughter, Sergeant Major. Despite himself, Richardson's mouth twitches upward. It's not quite a smile, but it's the closest thing to approval Elena has ever seen from him. Vasquez, he says finally, his voice carrying across the landing zone for everyone to hear. Front and center. Elena steps forward, spine straight, shoulders back. Around the landing zone, she can see soldiers leaning in, straining to hear what's about to happen. Richardson reaches into his own breast pocket and withdraws a small silver object paratrooper's wings. The same design as the ones Elena carries, but these are shiny and new. Official, the kind that goes on a service record and opens doors throughout the military. Elena Vasquez. Richardson's voice booms across the field. By virtue of completing all required training and demonstrating exceptional skill during final qualification, I hereby award you the United States Army Parachutist Badge. He pins the wings to Elena's uniform with steady hands, the small ceremony carrying enormous weight. When he steps back, his salute is crisp, respectful, the salute of one professional to another. Welcome to the Airborne, soldier. Elena returns the salute, her throat tight with emotion. Around the landing zone, the other soldiers begin applauding slowly at first, then with growing enthusiasm. Even the candidates who washed out join in, their disappointment temporarily forgotten in the face of something extraordinary. There's one more thing, Richardson says, his voice cutting through the applause. He looks around the assembled group, making sure he has everyone's attention. Effective immediately, Specialist Vasquez will be serving as assistant jump master for all future training operations. Seems we could use someone with her ... expertise. The applause grows louder. Elena can see faces in the crowd: surprise, respect, genuine warmth. Jenkins, still limping from his hard landing, manages a grudging nod. Martinez steps forward to shake her hand, his earlier guilt replaced by admiration. For the first time in 6 months, Elena feels like she belongs. Later, as the soldiers load their equipment and prepare for the flight back to base, Morrison approaches Elena with something like a smile on his weathered face. Your father would be proud, he says simply. Elena nods, not trusting her voice. In her pocket, the original silver wings, her father's wings, rest next to the new ones Richardson pinned to her chest. Past and present, legacy and promise, all connected by the simple act of stepping into empty air and trusting in the wind. You know, Morrison continues, there's something else your father used to say about paratroopers. What's that? Morrison's smile widens. He said the sky doesn't care what you look like, how big you are, or what anyone thinks of you. The sky only cares whether you're brave enough to jump. Elena looks up at the stars scattered across the vast darkness above, and for the first time in months, she feels truly free. 3 weeks later, the story breaks on social media. Someone recorded the landing zone ceremony on their phone, and the video goes viral within hours. Female soldier sticks perfect landing after sexist sergeant humiliates her, reads one headline. Daughter of legendary paratrooper proves herself in epic fashion, reads another. The Army, initially concerned about the negative publicity, quickly pivots to celebrating Elena's achievement. Her precision landing becomes a recruitment tool. Her story a testament to the military's commitment to equality and excellence. Richardson, for his part, adapts with surprising grace. During an interview with Army Times, he admits his initial skepticism, but praises Elena's skill and dedication. Sometimes, he says, the best soldiers come in packages you don't expect. Elena doesn't read the articles or watch the news coverage. She's too busy with her new responsibilities as assistant jumpmaster, too focused on training the next generation of paratroopers to worry about internet fame. But the impact of that night extends far beyond viral videos and news headlines. Within days, Elena receives messages from young women across the country, daughters of military families, aspiring soldiers, girls who suddenly see a path they'd never considered before. Dear Specialist Vasquez, reads one letter from a 16-year-old in Texas. My dad is Navy, and he says women can't handle combat roles. After seeing your video, I'm thinking about Airborne school when I turn 18. Did you ever think about quitting? Elena sits in her small barracks room, reading letter after letter, each one a reminder that her actions that night meant more than just earning her wings. She'd become a symbol, whether she wanted to or not. The knock on her door interrupts her thoughts. Come in. Richardson enters, looking strangely uncomfortable in the cramped space. He's carrying a manila folder thick with paperwork. Vasquez, we need to talk. Elena stands, automatically coming to attention. Old habits die hard, even when the power dynamic is shifted. At ease. Richardson settles into the room's only chair, his bulk making the furniture creak ominously. First things first, your father's service record. He opens the folder, revealing pages of commendations, performance reviews, and mission reports. Elena recognizes her father's photograph, clipped to the inside cover younger than she remembers him, wearing dress blues with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing you're the best at what you do. Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star with V device, 3 Purple Hearts. Richardson's voice carries a respect Elena has never heard from him before. 97 combat jumps over 3 deployments. 0 mission failures. Elena's throat tightens. She'd known her father was decorated, but seeing the full scope of his service laid out like this brings back memories she's tried to keep buried. What I didn't know, Richardson continues, was about his civilian competition record. Your father held the world record for precision, landing from 2008 to 2013. 3 consecutive national championships. The best precision paratrooper in the world was teaching his daughter everything he knew. Elena nods, not trusting her voice. That explains a lot. Richardson closes the folder with a sigh. It also creates a problem. What kind of problem, Sergeant Major? The kind where I've spent 6 months trying to wash out the daughter of the most legendary paratrooper of the last 20 years. His laugh is rueful, self-deprecating, the kind where my superior officers are now asking very pointed questions about my judgment and leadership style. Elena feels a moment of sympathy for the man who'd made her life hell for months. In his world, reputation and competence were everything. Making an enemy of Miguel Vasquez's daughter, even unknowingly, could end a career. I could put in for a transfer, she offers quietly. Absolutely not. Richardson's response is immediate, forceful. You earned your place here. More than that, you've shown this unit what elite performance looks like. Half these boys have been coasting on natural ability their whole lives. You've reminded them what real training can accomplish. He stands, moving to the small window that overlooks the training grounds. Below, Elena can see the next class of candidates running through obstacle courses, their instructors pushing them toward standards that seem impossible until they're not. There's something else, Richardson says without turning around. Command wants to put you forward for the Golden Knights demonstration team. Same unit your father served with. Elena's heart stops. The Golden Knights, the Army's premier parachute demonstration unit. The most elite jumpers in the military, traveling the world to showcase American airborne capabilities. Her father's old unit. I don't understand. I just earned my wings 3 weeks ago, which shows how little you understand about military politics. Richardson turns back to face her, his expression serious. That video has been seen by over 2 million people. You've become the face of women in combat roles, whether you like it or not. Command wants to capitalize on that. Elena feels the weight of expectation settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. She'd wanted to prove herself on her own merits, not as a symbol or propaganda tool. What if I refuse? Then you'll spend the next 4 years training basic jumpers at Fort Bragg and wondering what might have been. Richardson's tone is matter-of-fact. Or you can take the assignment, honor your father's legacy, and show the world that excellence doesn't depend on what's between your legs. The choice, when he puts it that way, isn't really a choice at all. 2 months later, Elena stands on the tarmac at Fort Bragg, watching the Golden Knights aircraft taxi into position. The team is returning from a demonstration in Chicago. Their red, white, and blue parachutes secured in the cargo bay, their precision formation flying having once again amazed thousands of spectators. She's been training with them for 6 weeks now, learning the intricate choreography of demonstration jumping, formation flying at terminal velocity, smoke trails and flag deployments, the kind of absolute precision that turns skydiving into art. The team lead approaches Master Sergeant Williams, a 20-year veteran with over 3,000 jumps. He's been surprisingly supportive of Elena's assignment, perhaps understanding better than most what it means to carry on a tradition. How are you feeling about tomorrow? He asks, nodding toward the demonstration aircraft. Tomorrow. Elena's first official jump with the Golden Knights, performing for a crowd of 50,000 at a college football game. The same kind of demonstration her father had performed dozens of times before his deployment to Afghanistan. Nervous, she admits. Good. Nervous keeps you sharp. Williams grins. Besides, you're jumping with the best team in the world. Your father's team. That evening, Elena sits alone in the team-ready room, studying aerial photographs of tomorrow's demonstration site. Wind patterns, emergency landing zones, crowd barriers, every detail memorized until she could navigate the jump blindfolded. The walls around her are covered with photographs spanning decades of Golden Knights history. Teams from the 1960s, when the unit was first formed. The 1980s, when precision landing became an art form. The 2000s, when her father was setting records that still stand today. She finds his picture easily a formal team portrait from 2012. Her father standing in the front row with the quiet confidence of a man at the top of his profession. He looks impossibly young, his smile genuine and warm. That was taken just before the World Championships in Australia, a voice says behind her. Elena turns to find Colonel Martinez, the team commander, no relation to the corporal who'd helped her over the obstacle course months ago. He's in his 50s, silver-haired, with the kind of bearing that speaks of decades in positions of real responsibility. You look just like him, the colonel continues, settling into a chair beside her. Same eyes. Same way of studying everything twice before making a decision. Did you know him well? Miguel was my team lead for 3 years. Best paratrooper I ever served with, and I've served with a lot of good ones. Martinez's voice carries the weight of genuine respect. He talked about you constantly. His daughter who was going to be better than he ever was. Elena feels tears threatening and blinks them back. I don't know if I can live up to that. You already have. Martinez stands, moving to the wall where Elena's own photograph has been added to the team roster. Tomorrow, you're not just representing the Golden Knights. You're representing every woman who's ever been told she's not strong enough, not fast enough, not good enough. Your father understood that kind of pressure. How do you mean? Miguel was the first Hispanic team lead in Golden Knights history. Faced a lot of the same skepticism you're dealing with now. People questioning whether he deserved his position, whether he was just filling a quota. Martinez's smile is sad. He proved them wrong the same way you did, by being undeniably, absolutely the best. The next morning dawns clear and cold, perfect conditions for precision flying. Elena goes through her pre-jump routine with mechanical precision equipment check. Weather briefing, final coordination with the team. The demonstration site is a college football stadium, filled to capacity with students and families excited to see the Golden Knights perform. From the aircraft's cargo bay, Elena can see the crowd as a vast sea of faces, all turned upward toward the sky. 5 minutes! Williams calls out over the engine noise. Elena checks her smoke canister red, white, and blue streams that will trail behind her during the descent. Checks her flag deployment system, an American flag that will unfurl at precisely the right moment for maximum visual impact. Checks her altimeter one final time. 2 minutes. Final checks. The team moves with practiced precision, each member knowing their role in the complex aerial ballet they're about to perform. Elena is flying number 4 position, not the lead, but crucial for maintaining the formation's integrity. 30 seconds. Elena moves to the door, the wind buffeting her helmet. Below, the stadium spreads out like a perfect target, the landing zone marked by a circle barely visible from this height. Green light! Go! The team exits in perfect sequence, their bodies disappearing into the void with practiced grace. Elena follows, her smoke trail beginning immediately, painting red across the blue sky. The formation comes together at 8,000 feet 7 parachutists flying in perfect diamond pattern, their smoke trails creating an American flag in the sky. Elena holds her position exactly, adjusting for wind drift with minute corrections that are invisible to spectators, but crucial for maintaining the formation's integrity. At 2,000 feet, the team begins their separation sequence, each member heading for their designated landing point. Elena's target is the 50-yard line, marked by a red circle barely 6 feet across. The crowd noise rises as she approaches, 50,000 voices cheering as she flares her canopy and touches down exactly where she's supposed to. The flag deploys perfectly, snapping open in the stadium's artificial wind. As Elena collapses her parachute, she can hear the announcer's voice booming across the stadium. Ladies and gentlemen, that precision landing was performed by specialist Elena Vasquez, following in the footsteps of her father, the legendary Captain Miguel Vasquez. The applause is thunderous, sustained, genuine. Elena looks up at the crowd and sees faces young women especially beaming with excitement and possibility. Later, at the post-demonstration reception, Elena is approached by a young girl, maybe 10 years old, wearing a military family t-shirt. "Are you really a paratrooper?" The girl asks, her voice full of wonder. "Yes, I am. My daddy says girls can't do dangerous jobs like that." Elena kneels down to the girl's eye level, thinking about all the letters she's received, all the young women who've told her that seeing her succeed gave them permission to dream bigger. "What's your name?" "Sophie." "Well, Sophie, your daddy is wrong about some things. But that's okay. Sometimes grown-ups need to learn new things too." Elena smiles, thinking about Richardson's grudging respect, about Morrison's quiet support, about all the men who'd learned to see her as a soldier rather than an exception. "Can I be a paratrooper when I grow up?" Elena looks at this girl bright-eyed, curious, full of potential that society will spend years trying to limit, and makes the same promise her father made to her years ago. "You can be anything you want to be, Sophie. But if you want to be a paratrooper, you'd better start practicing now." The sky doesn't wait for anyone. That night, alone in her hotel room, Elena takes out both sets of wings, her father's worn silver ones and her own bright new ones, and places them side by side on the bedside table. "I kept my promise, Dad," she whispers to the darkness. "I showed them what Vasquez blood can do." Outside her window, aircraft lights blink across the night sky. Other pilots, other dreamers, other people who've decided that the ground isn't enough. Tomorrow, Elena will fly again. She'll perform for another crowd, inspire another generation of young women, prove once more that excellence comes in all forms. But tonight, she simply rests in the knowledge that she's honored her father's legacy while building her own. They just humiliated the wrong woman. What they didn't know was that Elena Vasquez had been falling from the sky since she was 16 years old. And the sky never forgets its own. The hangar is quiet now, except for the distant hum of aircraft engines and the soft whisper of wind through the open bay doors. Elena stands alone at the edge of the loading ramp, looking out at the runway where tomorrow's candidates will begin their own journey toward the sky. In her pocket, 2 sets of silver wings catch the light. Some stories end with revenge. Some end with justice. The best ones end with understanding the recognition that strength comes in many forms, that courage can't be measured in inches or pounds, and that sometimes the most important battles are fought not against enemies, but against assumptions. Elena Vasquez learned to fly from her father, but she learned to fight from everyone who told her she couldn't. And in the end, that made all the difference. The wings on her chest gleam in the hangar lights, a symbol of everything she's earned and everything she's overcome. Tomorrow, she'll stand in front of a new class of candidates, men and women, who think they know what a paratrooper looks like. She'll teach them about the sky, and some of them, the lucky ones, will learn that heroes come in all sizes.